44%. That is the exact acceleration in vulnerability response times currently being achieved by security operations teams using Claude in production environments. Organizations like HackerOne and Palo Alto Networks are not deploying these systems to write casual internal emails. They are deploying them to parse highly sensitive, mission-critical security telemetry, where latency and accuracy dictate the survival of the enterprise. This metric establishes the absolute reality of the current market. We are no longer operating in an experimentation phase. The utility of generative AI is definitively proven. The implementation phase we are in right now is precisely what separates resilient organizations from those that are fundamentally exposed.
Welcome to Alababar HQ. Today we are conducting a strict executive explainer on enterprise AI architecture in 2026, operating under one foundational mandate: process must come before platform. The public conversation surrounding artificial intelligence continues to treat the ecosystem like a consumer horse race. The buying decision for senior tech leaders no longer is. Purchasing decisions now hinge strictly on architectural integrity, precise failure profiles, and the aggressive mitigation of technical debt. When your legal department asks for data boundary controls, when finance asks for predictable pricing models during usage spikes, and when engineering asks which system fails less often on massive code refactors, they are not asking which model is technically the smartest. They're asking which model fits the operational reality of the business. Automating a broken workflow merely scales inefficiency.
This briefing is methodical and grounded purely in operational realities, completely devoid of vendor marketing. We will proceed through 4 absolute stages. First, a high-stakes executive overview. Second, a detailed operational postmortem. Third, the human blueprint. And finally, a chronological action plan designed for immediate implementation.
Section 1. High-stakes hook and executive overview. Raw intelligence is rapidly becoming a commodity variable. The precise profile of system failure is your only true differentiator. In a high-volume enterprise workflow, if an autonomous assistant makes a plausible but factually wrong decision, the immediate question is who catches it and exactly how expensive is the resulting delay. That is the evaluation metric that actually matters. The reality of operational deployment breaks down into a strict failure matrix. Executives must select the model whose inherent strengths align inversely with their highest cost operational mistake. Consider long document reasoning. The metric you must measure is factual consistency across 50 to 200-page context. The hidden risk here is a quiet contradiction that surfaces after Section 30. A human reviewer burdened by cognitive fatigue will likely miss this. In multi-file coding, measuring the correctness of edits across modules reveals the hidden risk of a local fix that silently breaks shared abstractions deep within your repository. Finally, in tool using agent flows, completion quality with external tools often masks reward hacking, loop drift, and silent retries. Direct arguments about which model is smarter break down immediately in the face of these realities. Decision quality comes solely from weighting these specific slices by their direct business impact.
We are currently witnessing 2 market philosophies operating in fierce, irreconcilable opposition. On one side, we see the consumer internet logic. This philosophy focuses on maximizing habit formation at the free and low tiers, establishing a default verb for the user, and absorbing massive computational losses simply to secure distribution. On the opposite side are the rigid, unyielding requirements of enterprise control surfaces. This is where large, complex deals are actually won and lost. Your security teams demand granular permissioning, immutable auditable logs, and absolute clarity on training data usage boundaries. Legal teams require contract language that can survive the scrutiny of cross-border operations. Platform teams demand APIs that do not force brittle wrappers around every single model call. Ecosystem inheritance can provide a distinct advantage here by piggybacking on existing identity and access management protocols. But be warned, that exact same inheritance becomes permanent vendor lock-in if your teams assume convenience equals suitability for every highly specialized workload.
Section 2. Detailed operational postmortem. Pristine data integration and core baseline integrity must be secured before you attempt to scale any autonomous systems. The timeline of AI coding capability demonstrates a violent acceleration in this operational demand. Between 2021 and 2023, development largely consisted of human engineers writing documentation on laptops. From 2023 to 2025, chatbots assisted by generating short code snippets that required manual human transfer and validation. By 2026, autonomous coding agents operate completely independently. They are actively saturating benchmark limits. SWE Bench Verified measures a model's ability to resolve real GitHub issues end-to-end. This requires the agent to write a code change that fixes the issue and successfully passes the project's own rigorous tests. Current data shows models like Claude Opus 4.6 and Gemini 3.1 Pro Preview virtually tied at over 80% success rates. The shift from human-driven generation to autonomous saturation is complete. The architecture must now adapt to this velocity.
Let us address the harsh reality of compliance. A business associate agreement is a specific instrument under HIPAA. It is not a general security promise. It binds the vendor to protect the health information it receives. However, a vendor's signature is merely the floor. It satisfies almost none of the administrative, physical, or technical safeguards required by the security rule. Zero data retention is the mandatory technical condition that makes scaling possible in this environment. If data is retained, it must be comprehensively secured, access controlled, and audited. Data that was never retained eliminates that risk surface entirely. But zero data retention is an account-level posture. It requires a deliberate, exhaustive procurement assessment, not a simple software toggle. Even with this in place, the organization itself must build the role-based access controls, the audit logging infrastructure, and the formally documented risk analysis. The signature on the contract is just the first brick. The enterprise must build the house.
The Model Context Protocol, or MCP, is the architectural standard that finally eliminates the severe fragility of bespoke API integration. Previously, enterprise developers were forced to write highly bespoke code to pull necessary data into AI agents. This created hard-to-scale solutions that demanded constant, expensive maintenance. MCP provides a universal standard. It operates on a robust client-server architecture, defining tools, resources, and prompts. It relies on a lightweight JSON RPC protocol, which fundamentally reduces integration complexity from a chaotic web of endpoints into a single, secure gateway. Most importantly, it allows agents to securely federate enterprise data, query proprietary databases, and execute multi-step workflows based entirely on real-time inputs without compromising systemic integrity.
When deploying MCP, particularly in integrations with data streaming platforms like Confluent, the architectural safeguards become absolute. Consider a standard workload requiring the transfer of sensitive customer contact details. First, the agent initiates the call, but before any data leaves your controlled environment, the critical security intervention occurs. The client intercepts and locally tokenizes the personally identifiable information. This happens before it ever reaches the external model. When that data is subsequently shared in another call, it is untokenized via a secure lookup within the local client. The real names and addresses flow securely only to their intended destination. The model processes the complex action without ever logging or processing the raw sensitive data. This establishes deterministic security rules, completely and structurally isolating the model from the compliance hazard.
Deploying highly autonomous agents onto poorly defined legacy workflows is a catastrophic error in capital allocation. If your enterprise resource planning workflows require manual reconciliation because the underlying financial ledgers are structurally flawed, applying an AI agent to the process does not solve the flaw. It simply executes the broken process with blinding speed. This compounds your technical debt exponentially. It generates an unmanageable volume of hidden errors that your human workforce will inevitably have to untangle. Baseline core integrity must be established before optimizations are layered on top. You must clean the data, validate your inventory, and map the exact logic of the process before you authorize autonomous execution. Process before platform is not a suggestion, it is a mandatory sequence of operations.
Section 3. The Human Blueprint.
The most volatile variable in any enterprise deployment is not the software. It is the workforce. Change fatigue, user resistance, and the severe psychological friction of massive automation dictate the ultimate success or failure of your architecture. A profound insight from an Anthropic researcher perfectly encapsulates the organizational shockwaves we are currently observing. Work traditionally functioned on a gift economy of small favors. Asking a colleague to debug a script or review a paragraph created mutual awareness and deep institutional cohesion. Autonomous models execute these tasks instantly. They create zero operational debt. But every automated execution is a lost bid for human collaboration. The psychological impact of this zero-debt automation is severe. It rapidly erodes employee identity capital. Workers express sentiments of feeling highly obsolete on the days when the automation functions perfectly, and utterly lost on the days when the opaque system breaks. Managing this psychological friction is a mandatory executive function, not an HR afterthought. The operational role of the human is narrowing dramatically. At the bleeding edge of enterprise technology, human engineers are stopping the physical act of writing code entirely. The labor shifts exclusively to code review, systemic oversight, and architectural judgment. This introduces a new operational bottleneck driven directly by Amdahl's law, which dictates that a system is only as fast as its slowest component. If the machine generates pull requests significantly faster than the human can effectively review them, human review caps the velocity of the entire organization. We are literally witnessing the deployment of automated systems specifically designed to review the code generated by other automated systems. The human is elevated to a pure oversight role. This requires entirely different management paradigms, performance metrics, and training protocols.
The last sanctuary for human advantage was supposed to be high-level judgment, the act of selecting exactly which problem to solve. The data definitively indicates this boundary is also shifting. In tracking complex, open-ended investigative problems, models are increasingly capable of steering multi-step sessions toward actual research findings. When analyzing complex situations where a human researcher made a suboptimal choice, the model's ability to suggest the correct next step advanced from 51% with Opus 4.5 in November 2025 to 64% with Mythos Preview in April 2026. The day-to-day execution of complex knowledge work is essentially a long chain of next-step decisions. The models are demonstrating an accelerating, highly measurable capacity to handle these judgment calls autonomously.
Section 4. Chronological Action Plan and Guardrails.
We conclude with a highly tactical deployment framework. Scaling assistant usage without this strict architecture creates organizational noise much faster than it creates productivity. The true risk in 2026 is organizational overcommitment to a single vendor's assistant before internal evaluation maturity has been thoroughly established. This framework is an unyielding 90-day protocol designed to establish core integrity and systematically defy vendor lock-in. Phase 1 demands exhaustive red teaming of baseline tasks. Phase 2 enforces rigid routing rules over blind brand loyalty. Phase 3 instruments the actual cost of labor and quality, not just the token overhead. Phase 4 hardens governance prior to broad expansion, establishing the firm's technical leverage required for eventual vendor negotiation.
The first 15 days are the crucible. You must not allow your business units to submit only the easy wins. That is a recipe for false confidence. You must select 12 to 20 representative tasks across at least 4 distinct functions, intentionally including the ugly, highly complex edge cases. For every single task, you must define the absolute gold standard output. You must establish the maximum acceptable error threshold. Most importantly, you must enforce a strict retry budget. Determine exactly how many autonomous reruns are allowed before a human is mandated to take over the process. Record not just the binary pass or fail state, but the specific human correction effort measured in exact minutes. This establishes the true baseline before any workflow optimization is authorized.
Pricing in the current ecosystem is simply product design in disguise. The profound strategic mistake is treating pricing as a final procurement negotiation step rather than a functional boundary. Token price tables do not capture economic reality. A CFO may look at bundled AI capabilities and see them as cost-efficient because they ride on pre-negotiated cloud spend. Meanwhile, the operations team absorbs massive, unquantified performance penalties from using an inadequate assistant. Cheap output that requires 2 distinct reprompts from a highly paid engineer is not cheaper. Expensive output that actively avoids human rework yields vastly superior returns. Error correction labor dictates your true return on investment.
We conclude this briefing with the fundamental leadership challenge. It is no longer a question of which model your enterprise should buy. That is the distraction. The question you must answer is this: what category of error can your organization safely tolerate, and what category of error is truly existential for your workflow? If factual drift in legal documents is your killer variable, you select the exact stack that minimizes that specific failure profile. If cost unpredictability during a massive data surge is your existential threat, you optimize aggressively for routing discipline. Assistant decisions are no longer just software preferences. They are absolute architecture decisions. They dictate process design, tooling strategy, and the ultimate operational resilience of your enterprise. Proceed with the discipline this architecture demands.